What if the pursuit of physical perfection meant surrendering your very soul? Welcome to ancient Sparta, a world where a child's first cry could be their last, and the quest to build the perfect warrior came at an unthinkable price. When most of us think of Sparta, images of chiseled warriors in crimson cloaks leap to mind, heroes standing defiant against impossible odds. But beneath the myth, behind the noble speeches and fiery battles, lies a reality few care to imagine. A society obsessed with eugenics, discipline, and the art of war. A society willing to sacrifice its humanity to forge something closer to a living weapon than a human being. Forget everything you think you know. The truth is more disturbing, more fascinating, and 100 times darker. Where does the making of a Spartan warrior begin? Not in a battlefield, not even in rigorous training, but in a bedroom stripped of love. In Sparta, personal choice, affection, passion, none of these mattered. Sex was not an act of intimacy, but a command from the state. The mission was cold and unsentimental, to produce the deadliest human weapons the ancient world would ever know. The elders of Sparta, men weathered by decades of relentless conflict, served as matchmakers. But theirs was a perverse kind of matchmaking, judging use as one might judge prize livestock. The broadest shoulders, the proudest lineages, the sturdiest frames, these were the checkboxes. Beauty had its place, but only as evidence of robust health and good genetics. From the start, every pairing was a transaction in the vast machinery of state-driven human engineering. Think about that. Your body, your desires, even your children belonged first to Sparta. From here, a Spartan child's fate was carved by rituals unlike anywhere else in Greece. Marriage was a ceremony not of celebration, but strategy. The bride's hair was shorn, her form dressed in a man's robe, awaiting her new husband in a dark room. These unions were shaped not by affection, but by calculation, intended only to breed the strongest stock. Newlywed men, still bound to military barracks until age 30, would sneak away under cover of night just for brief moments with their wives. Always furtive, always secret. The result? Family itself faded. Love reduced to civic duty, intimacy to service of the state's survival. The state's needs always overshadowed the individual's heart, sculpting every generation anew. If you were born a girl in Sparta, your future was decided before you drew your first breath. Your worth was in your womb. From a young age, Spartan girls were pushed to run, wrestle, throw javelins, not as sport, not even as preparation for war, but to shape strong bodies capable of bearing the next generation of warriors. Your life was a battlefield, just not the kind with swords. But what if nature or fate intervened? What if the wife of a celebrated soldier could not bear children, or bore only the weak? Sparta had an answer, and it's chilling. A law allowed a strong warrior to sleep with another man's wife. Adultery in most ancient cultures brought shame. Here it was civic glory. Husbands often agreed, proud if their wives could contribute superior children to the state. Love was irrelevant. Faithfulness, an obstacle. Human feeling, in a word, was weakness. Imagine this. You've just survived the agony of childbirth. Hours of pain, hope, and trembling anticipation. But instead of soft blankets and lullabies, your newborn is taken from your arms and placed before a council. No warmth, no mercy, only judgment. Under the flickering torchlight, stern eyes examine the fragile bundle. They look not for cuteness, not for potential love, but for strength, symmetry, vitality. The infant's first test is not life itself, but worthiness to live it. One shiver, a weak cry, a hint of deformity, and the verdict would arrive, cold and absolute. This was Sparta, a society built like a blade, sharp, disciplined, unbending. To them, weakness was a disease that threatened the whole. Every citizen, every warrior, every mother and child existed for the state, not for themselves. Personal sorrow was a luxury Sparta could not afford. If the council approved, the baby was returned. No longer a mother's child, but the property of the nation. The path ahead was already carved in stone. Years of training, loyalty, and sacrifice. To be Spartan was to belong wholly to the city-state, to know that your body and life were never your own. But if the infant failed the test, there was no second chance. Wrapped in silence, they would be taken to the barren heights of Mount Taygetus, to a place called Apothetai. There, among the cold rocks and whispering wind, the elements decided what the council would not. It was nature's final judgment on imperfection. It's haunting to think how a civilization so focused on strength could also be so fragile in heart. Yet through their brutal practices, the Spartans forged one of the most disciplined societies in history, a place where fear and power were twins, and even birth was a battlefield. To modern sensibilities, this sounds monstrous. To Sparta, it was simple math. Only the strong survive, and mercy was a threat the city could not afford. Centuries before the term eugenics was born, Sparta practiced it ruthlessly. They believed humanity could and should be perfected by selective breeding. Procreation was not an act of joy. It was a grim obligation. The family was not a sanctuary from the world's pressures. It was merely another arm of the state's war machine. If you balked at marriage or childbearing, you weren't merely free-spirited. You were condemned as a traitor to Sparta. Unmarried men were branded as deserters, paraded naked, mocked in the icy streets, ostracized for denying the state its due. Pass the council's test, and your ordeal was still just beginning. In Sparta, there was a saying, "The state nurtures, the mother only bears." At the age of 7, boys were ripped from their families and thrust into the agoge, the most brutal educational and training system humanity has devised. Picture a 7-year-old herded into cold communal barracks, sleeping on beds made from reeds torn barehanded, shivering through long winters in threadbare tunics, and always hungry. Hunger, deprivation, and discomfort were not flaws in the system, but features. Comfort breeds softness, and softness could one day doom Sparta. Stealing food was expected. It wasn't a question of morality. If you succeeded, you ate. If you were caught, punishment awaited, not for theft, but for failing at stealth. Success excused anything. Failure, on the other hand, was inexcusable. The Cryptia wasn't just military training, it was a psychological breaking point. Murder, once unthinkable, became an initiation rite, proof that mercy was gone. Once the mission was complete, the survivors had become true Spartans, cold, cunning, and unflinching. And in a legal twist, the state made it official by declaring annual war on the Helots, so that these actions would never taint the warrior with guilt. It was the law taken to its darkest conclusion. What awaited a Spartan after years of violence and deprivation? At 30, he could finally leave the barracks, take up household duties, supposedly step into full citizenship. Yet even this freedom was an illusion. The expectation was now to reproduce, to perpetuate the cycle anew, right alongside the continuing duties of a soldier. Yet the bond with wife and child was always secondary to allegiance to the state. While boys endured anguish, girls followed their own path through the crucible. Where most of Greece denied education and agency to women, Sparta did the opposite, so long as it served the war effort. Spartan girls were educated, trained physically, even allowed to own land. But all roads led back to a single expectation: breed strong sons, shape disciplined households, instill in children the code of the warrior. Their strength was legendary, but it was a strength taxed to support a system of relentless cruelty. Ancient observers were so astounded that philosophers like Plato idealized Sparta, not realizing its cost. For Spartan women, tenderness had to be repressed, replaced with an unyielding patriotism. A mother's love was to be shown only through sacrifice, handing a son his shield with those infamous words, "Return with it or upon it." In Sparta, even marriage had to be engineered for purpose, not affection. The groom seized his bride by night. Her friends shaved her head, dressed her in man's clothing, and left her waiting on straw. The coupling was hurried, passionless, secret. Domestic affection, the state believed, was a dangerous distraction, a potential crack in the shield of war. Love, again, had no place, only duty. For 3 centuries, this system worked, perhaps too well. The poison of perfection ran deep, the bloodline narrowed. Each lost warrior in battle was a loss Sparta could not easily replace. Demographic collapse set in. A people so elite that every defeat was devastating, every death a tragedy Greek cities could more easily absorb. Flexibility died alongside compassion. Spartan soldiers could obey orders with unwavering discipline. But when warfare changed, when tactics required innovation and improvisation, they found themselves outmatched. Other societies evolved. Sparta did not. The final straw? Wealth. Victory over Athens brought a flood of Persian gold. Greed replaced austerity. Corruption took root, rotting away the ideals of equality and discipline. The once great city-state became a curiosity, a museum of its former strength. Sparta's fatal inflexibility reached its climax at the Battle of Leuctra. Facing a Theban army that finally outthought them, the Spartan phalanx, the backbone of their military, was crushed, its king killed, its vaunted discipline scattered. In that single blow, centuries of tradition, training, and brutality could do little to save them. The state that had sought perfection above all now faced rapid decline. In the end, Sparta's story is more than the legend of a few hundred warriors at Thermopylae. It's a cautionary tale about the destructive power of obsession, of a society so committed to creating flawless soldiers that it erased the very qualities that make us human: compassion, love, and imagination. When travelers reached Sparta in the centuries that followed, they found only ruins and rituals. The machine had finally consumed itself. Yet the legacy endures. The image of the perfect warrior, a ghost forged in steel and suffering, still haunts our imagination. But at what cost? As we look back, what did Sparta truly gain through its brutal breeding practices? For a time, unrivaled military power, a place in the legends of history, the near worship of strength and discipline. But it lost forever its capacity for kindness, for innovation, for simple joy. The last lesson of Sparta is a warning bell from antiquity. The quest for perfection, when pursued at the expense of all else, leads not to greatness, but to oblivion. So next time you hear the name Sparta, remember, not just the warriors, but the mothers who handed over their sons, the children shaped by cruelty, the joyless marriages, the shadows that crept through the night, and the silent mountains that bore witness to history's greatest, most terrible experiment in the pursuit of human strength. Here in the ruins, amidst the stones and the echoes, the ghosts of Sparta remind us, perfection is never worth the price of our souls. If this journey into the heart of Sparta has fascinated you, don't let the story end here. Hit subscribe and join us for more deep dives into the untold truths of history. Share your thoughts and questions in the comments. Your voice drives our future investigations. Together, let's keep exploring the shadows and uncovering the lessons still hidden in the ruins of our past. Your curiosity keeps history alive,